In iOS 12, Apple has simplified force-quitting apps on the iPhone X. Like in iOS 11, you still swipe up from the bottom of the screen and hold for a moment to open up the app switcher. But now, instead of having to hold down on an app thumbnail for a second to put it into quit mode, you can simply swipe up the app to quit it. It's a much smoother experience. If you're using an iOS device without Face ID and which still has a home button, you can still double-click the home button to open up the app switcher and swipe away apps from there as well. That experience hasn't changed. But I also want to mention or remind you that force-quitting apps really is only for when an app isn't behaving like it should or is frozen. There's no need to quit apps that are running fine just by swiping them all away like this. It doesn't save you any battery life, and in fact it may actually use more battery power to restart an app instead of just letting it stay open in the background. But if you're on an iPhone X, force-quitting apps has gotten a little bit easier. Another way in which Apple has improved the notification system in iOS 12 is with a feature called Instant Tuning. Now, you've been able to customize notifications to some extent for many, many years now, but there are probably several apps on your iPhone or iPad that pop up lots of notifications that you've never gotten around to digging into the settings to change. Or maybe there are certain apps that you want to temporarily change the notification settings for. Whatever the case, now when you see a notification on your lock screen or in the notification center, you can swipe left to reveal these buttons here. And you can see we now have this Manage button. That pops open this screen with the Instant Tune options. The first button here is Deliver Quietly. If you select that, notifications won't pop up on your screen as a banner or a message, or however you've chosen to display notifications from that app. Instead, notifications from this app will be sent directly into Notification Center. You may still see a badge number appear on the app icon if you've set it up that way, but Deliver Quietly does just that. It doesn't interrupt anything you're doing on screen. To check notifications that have come in quietly, you can open up Notification Center by dragging down from the top of the screen or swiping up on the lock screen. The second option here is Turn Off, which does just that. When you tap Turn Off, you're asked to confirm that you really want to turn off all notifications for this app. And if you choose to do so, notifications won't appear anywhere, basically silencing the entire app until you deliberately open it up again. I'm just going to cancel that. Now there's also a Settings button here, which when tapped, takes you directly to the notification settings for that app. So this is where you can fully customize your notifications or undo the settings you may have applied with the Deliver Quietly or Turn Off options. If you chose Deliver Quietly, for instance, you'll see that only Notification Center will be checked under Alerts. If you want to again see notifications from this app on your lock screen or as a banner, you can check those options here. I'm going to swipe down to open Notification Center again. Now I also want to mention that in addition to swiping left on a notification to open up its options, you can also long hold on a notification, or if you have a device that supports 3D touch, press down on the notification, which reveals a preview, and up here in the right-hand corner, you can tap this button to access the Manage area to customize your notification settings. And I'll just cancel that for now. So that's the new Instant Tune feature, which makes it much easier to adjust your notification settings because it gives you the options to do so from right here instead of having to dig down through the settings to find the right menus and location. Another new feature of iOS 12 is USB restricted mode. This is a security feature that deactivates your iPhone or iPad's Lightning port if it's been more than 1 hour since you last unlocked your device. So for example, if your iPhone is stolen and more than 1 hour has passed since you last unlocked it, the thieves won't be able to connect your phone to a computer to copy its data. This feature is on by default, but if you want to turn it off, go to Settings, to Face ID and Passcode, or Touch ID and Passcode depending on what device you're using, and make sure you enter your password to access these settings. Then scroll down to find the USB accessories switch. Now the wording here is a little confusing. The description says, unlock iPhone to allow USB accessories to connect when it has been more than 1 hour since your iPhone was locked. And with the switch on, the description says, turn off to prevent USB accessories from connecting when your iPhone has been locked for more than an hour. But basically, if you want to enable USB devices to connect without any restrictions, turn the switch on. But if you want to make it so devices can't connect if it's been more than an hour since you last unlocked your phone, leave this option off. Even with it off, you'll still be able to connect to any USB accessories you want, but you'll just be prompted to unlock your device first. iOS 12 has a new option that lets you automatically install the most recent version of the operating system when an update becomes available. If you like having the most up-to-date software, you might want to keep this option on. But if you're the sort of person who likes to wait to make sure there aren't any bugs or conflicts with the apps you use, you can turn the option off. Just go into Settings, to General, and Software Update, and here you'll find the Automatic Update setting. With it enabled, anytime a system update becomes available, it will automatically be installed overnight as long as your device is connected to power and a Wi-Fi network. Or you can leave this feature off to manually install updates on your own schedule. If you rely on a lot of apps to get through your daily schedule, to keep up with the news, or to remind you of events, you're probably used to seeing a long list of notifications anytime you pick up your phone or when you open up Notification Center by swiping down from the top of the screen. Now previously, depending on the apps you're using, you may have seen multiple notifications from the same app, which means you'd have to scroll down to see the notifications from other apps. In iOS 12, however, Apple has introduced group notifications. By default, notifications from apps are all grouped together in a stack, instead of from the top of the screen to the bottom of your screen. To see all the notifications in a stack, just tap it. With some apps, you still may get multiple stacks. For example, a messaging app might group messages from different people together so you can see multiple conversation threads at a glance. So you can see in this case, I've expanded the messages stack. I can tap Show Less there at the top to stack them again. I also have a stack here from the Chamberlain app, and tapping on that expands that as well. Now you can also customize which app's notifications are grouped together like this. Go into Settings, to Notifications, and here tap on the app you want to customize. Down here under Options, you'll find Notification Grouping. And you can see Automatic is selected by default. The automatic setting is what lets iOS intelligently organize notifications from a single app into separate stacks if it determines that it makes sense to do so. Again, you might see multiple stacks from the Messages app if you receive multiple messages from different people, or multiple stacks from the Mail app if you receive emails from separate people. If you prefer to have all notifications from the app in a single stack regardless of their content, just tap By App. Or, if you prefer to go back to the pre-iOS 12 view of notifications where they aren't all grouped together, you can tap Off. But you would have to go through and do this for each individual app. I'm going to leave mine set to Automatic, because I think you'll find that group notifications are a welcome new feature that really go a long way to removing a lot of the clutter from the lock screen, and you'll probably want to leave its default settings on. In iOS 12, Apple has expanded the capabilities and options of the Do Not Disturb feature, which prevents calls and notifications from popping up for a set amount of time. As before, you can open up Control Center, and here tap the Do Not Disturb button to toggle the mode on and off. But now you can also long hold or 3D touch on the button to open up some Do Not Disturb options. These are especially useful if you've ever made the mistake of manually enabling Do Not Disturb and then forgot to turn it off, and hours later wondering why you're not receiving any calls or messages. The options you see here can depend on a few things. First, we have the For 1 hour setting, which does exactly what it says. Select that and Do Not Disturb will be enabled for 1 hour, and then will automatically turn off, letting you receive notifications again. Now the second option will either say until this evening, or until this morning, or until this afternoon, depending on what time of day it is. But it basically just enables Do Not Disturb for a few hours, a little longer than the 1 hour limit. We also have Until I Leave This Location, which may or may not show up if you're not in a set location. Another option which you might not see here is Until the End of This Event, which will appear if you're in the middle of a timed event you have set in the Calendar app. I've set up one called Offsite Team Meeting, and you can see its time duration here. So you can see we have several more options than what was previously available, which was basically either manually enabling Do Not Disturb or scheduling Do Not Disturb. And speaking of scheduling, we can quickly get to the Do Not Disturb settings by tapping Schedule from here. And as in previous versions of iOS, you can enable Scheduled to set a range of time for Do Not Disturb to be enabled. Now there is another new feature option here too, which is the bedtime switch. With that enabled, the lock screen of your phone will be dimmer than you usually have it set, and no notifications will show up on the lock screen. So basically, if you're trying to fall asleep, or if you wake up in the middle of the night and you pick up your phone, you'll be able to check the time, but you won't be distracted by a bright screen or by any notifications. So with that on, if I now enable Do Not Disturb from up here, and I lock my phone, when I tap the screen, I see this message telling me that notifications are hidden until 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. And this is what you'll see until you pick up your phone and turn off Do Not Disturb again, or until you reach the end of the Do Not Disturb schedule. In iOS 12, anytime you're visiting a website or using an app that asks you to create an account, your iPhone or iPad will automatically suggest a strong password to use for your login. Now, iOS has done this in the past, but iOS 12 makes it easier to generate, store, and use the passwords it creates for you. First, go into Settings, tap your name at the top, and go into iCloud. And here, make sure iCloud Keychain is enabled. Then, anytime you're filling out a form that asks for a password, and this can be in the Safari browser or in an app, you can tap in the password field, and you'll see a unique password automatically filled out for you. And you'll be prompted to either use this strong password, or you can tap Choose My Own Password if you prefer to come up with your own. But if you choose Use Strong Password, that password is automatically saved into your iCloud keychain. And the next time you need to sign into the account you created, I can then tap the suggestion above the keyboard. And once I verify my ID, that login information is automatically filled out. And this information will sync across any devices onto which you're logged into with the same iCloud account. As before, you can access a list of your saved passwords by going to Settings, Passwords and Accounts, Website and App Passwords, and once you verify your ID, you can see your login information. Or as a convenient shortcut, here on iOS 12, you can now ask Siri to show you specific passwords. As long as your phone is unlocked, you can say something like, "What's my password for LinkedIn?" And your password will be displayed in case you need to type it into a different device on which your passwords aren't stored. In iOS 12, you can assign your own personalized phrases to automate common tasks you perform on your device. Go into Settings, and then scroll down and find Siri and Search. Here at the top, we have this Suggested Shortcuts area. These are all based on activities you've recently performed on your device. So for example, I have a Safari shortcut where I was visiting the LinkedIn login or sign up page. From the Photos app, I was viewing my camera roll, and in the Music app, I was playing the Beats One radio station. So I could create shortcuts to these particular activities, and I can also tap All Shortcuts to see all the shortcut suggestions that Siri has come up with. So if you see a task you often perform here, like a FaceTime audio call to a certain person, or navigating to a common meeting location with the Map app, you can choose to add a personalized phrase to Siri to automate that task. For example, here under Photos, I see View Camera Roll and View Memory Melbourne. Now, usually when I open up the Photos app, I navigate right to the camera roll so I can see my most recent photos. So I'll tap that to create a Siri shortcut. That brings up this screen that says Add to Siri, and there's a record button down here at the bottom. So I'll tap that record button to record my custom phrase. Open the camera roll. So it automatically detects when I'm done with my phrase, and I can see the text of it right there. I'll tap Done, and that's pretty much it. So now if I say, "Hey Siri, open the camera roll," it takes me right to my Photos app and opens up the camera roll album, all without me having to tap anything on the screen. Let's go back to our shortcut settings. Any custom phrases you create will be found here at the top of the screen under Siri Shortcuts, My Shortcuts. If necessary, you can swipe any of these to the left to delete them. I'll keep that as is for now. Now on top of this, app developers have begun integrating Siri Shortcuts directly into their apps, making it even easier to perform common tasks that might not show up in Siri settings. For example, I use the TripIt app to keep track of my travel plans. They've recently updated the app to include Siri Shortcuts. Now how you set this up can vary from app to app, but in this case, I'm going to go to the More button here in the lower right-hand corner, and here I'll find Siri Shortcuts. And on this screen, I can add shortcuts to get upcoming flight info, to quickly see the details of my next flight, and upcoming travel plans to see a timeline of my upcoming plans. So for example, I'll tap Upcoming Flight Information. And we see the same screen we saw before to add a custom phrase. So I'll tap the Record button at the bottom and I'll say, "What's going on with my next flight?" And again, I can see the text here. It's exactly what I said, so I don't need to re-record it, so I'll tap Done. So let's say maybe I'm rushing through the airport later, coming in from a late flight, and instead of pulling out my phone, opening up the TripIt app, and searching for my info, I can now just say, "Hey Siri, what's going on with my next flight?"
TripIt says, United Airlines Flight 340 from Dulles to San Francisco is scheduled to depart today at 5:18 p.m. from Terminal C Gate C27.
So there's all my info. And that saves me a lot of steps, and in this case it would be really useful if I was wearing my earbuds or my AirPods. I wouldn't even have to take my phone out as I'm rushing to my next flight. And you'll definitely see more developers adding Siri Shortcuts to their apps in the coming weeks and months. It's also worth noting that Apple will be releasing a Shortcuts app from which you'll be able to export custom actions that include multiple steps, and both Apple and third-party apps will be able to be included. So for example, you'll be able to say something like, "I'm home" to Siri, and instantly have your lights turn on, your air conditioning turn up, and your preferred music playlist start playing through your smart speakers. If that's the sort of thing that interests you, keep an eye out for the Shortcuts app from Apple. In iOS 12, devices like the iPhone X that use Face ID to authenticate the user can now be set up with multiple faces or alternate appearances. This is useful if you frequently change your appearance or if you want to give someone else access to your device without them needing to enter the passcode. For example, if you often find that Face ID has trouble recognizing you with a certain pair of sunglasses and a hat on, or if you wear your hair down instead of up, you can try adding an alternate appearance. Or if you're sharing your device with your significant other, you can both scan your faces in to unlock the device. To set this up, go to Settings, Face ID and Passcode, and here tap Set up an alternate appearance. Then just follow the instructions to set up Face ID just like you did when you set it up the first time. Now it's also worth noting that in iOS 12, if your phone is locked, and you pick it up, but Face ID doesn't recognize you, you can now swipe up from the bottom of the screen to have it try again, instead of being forced to use the passcode to unlock your device. In iOS 12, you'll find a completely brand new set of features designed to help you be more aware of the time you spend using your iPhone or iPad, and which apps and activities you spend that time on. It's called Screen Time, and in addition to giving you data about your device usage, it also includes tools to help you limit the amount of time you spend staring at your screen so you can work or concentrate on other things. This is also a great tool for parents who want to limit and manage their kids' device usage. Start by going into Settings, and here you'll find the new Screen Time settings. Now the first time you select this, you'll see a button to turn on Screen Time, and you'll also be asked if you're setting it up for yourself or for a child. In this case, I've set it up for my own device, but we'll talk about how to set it up for a child here too. Here at the top, you'll see your device's name, as well as any other devices onto which you're logged into the same iCloud account. This can let you see your screen time data for all of your devices and not just the one you're currently using. I just have the one device, iPhone X, here at the top, and tapping a device's name brings up this screen where you can see your usage statistics for the current day or for the last 7 days. Here I can see the amount of time I've spent on my phone each day. If I tap and hold on these bars, I can see exactly how much time was spent. And below that, I can see the categories of apps I spent the most time in. Below that, I see my weekly total. Next, I see my most used apps. You can see here I spent the most time this week in Waze, because I was driving around a lot, followed by Apollo, which is a Reddit browsing app, and then a couple games and social media apps here. If you prefer, you can tap Show Categories to see this info divided into app types. The next section here is Pickups, which counts how many times you've physically picked up your phone this week. And below that, you can see which apps have sent you the most notifications over the week. And that can give you some insight on which apps demand the most of your time. Now, if I scroll back up and go to the Today view, I can see the same statistics for the current day. And this gives me an idea of how much I've been using my phone already today. If you feel like you pick up your phone a lot or that you're spending too much time with certain apps, you can take advantage of some of the screen time tools back here on the main screen. First, we have downtime. When this is enabled, you can choose a schedule where apps will be mostly disabled, except for any ones you specifically choose to keep active. Now, I say mostly because you can still easily open apps during downtime if you really need to. We'll talk more about that in a moment. But you can see here that it says that this setting will apply to every device you're signed into with your iCloud account, so you don't have to set this up more than once on multiple devices. I'm going to enable this for now so you can see how it works. It's actually still morning here, but I'm going to set the clock back to make sure it's enabled. And once that's set, I'm going to go back to the screen time settings. And here we're going to go into the Always Allowed area. This is where you can choose which apps will always be allowed even during downtime. For example, the phone app is always enabled. You can see Messages is in here, as well as FaceTime. I've also added Maps here in case I want to navigate during downtime. And you might want to just go through and add some of your other messaging services like FaceTime or Mail, depending on what you want to be able to see during downtime. Just select the apps you want to use. And just so you can see how this works, if I now go back out to my home screen, because downtime is currently enabled, notice that most of the apps have a little hourglass icon next to their names and they're grayed out. But the ones I've allowed, like FaceTime and Messages and the phone app, don't have that icon and I can use them as normal. But if I tap one of the apps that have the downtime symbol, for example Waze, I see this message saying that I've reached the time limit for this app. Now, downtime is mostly about helping you limit your screen time using your own self-control. If you really want or need to use an app during downtime, you can tap Ignore Limit, which lets you use the app and gives you the options to get a reminder about downtime in 15 minutes, or you can ignore the limit for the rest of the day. So if I say remind me in 15 minutes, for example, I'm now in the app. And you may be thinking this is okay for managing your own time, but it's a little too easy to get around this if you're setting up screen time management for a kid. So let's go back to screen time settings. And down here towards the bottom, you have the option to add a screen time passcode. And I'll just add an easy one for this. And this passcode will be required to make any changes to screen time settings. So if I were setting this up to limit my kids' time, I would go back into the downtime settings, and notice I do have to enter the passcode now in order to get in here. And here I can enable Block at Downtime. Now when I go back to my home screen and try to open an app that's not allowed during downtime, instead of seeing the Ignore option, I see Ask for More Time. So as a parent, my kid would have to bring the device to me. I could tap Ask for More Time. I'd be required to enter the passcode. And then I could choose for how long to enable this specific app. So with a passcode, you really can limit the device's screen time. I'm just going to cancel that. And let's go back to settings again. Now I'm going to disable the passcode so I can go through the rest of these settings without having to enter it each time. Now we also have an app limits area. In this section, you can limit certain categories of apps to set amount of times. So here I can tap Add Limit. And if, for example, I wanted to limit social media apps, I could select that, then tap Add, and then set the amount of time I want to limit those apps to. I can even customize on which days these settings apply to. So if I wanted to give my kids more time on the weekends, I could select Friday, for example, and add another hour. Now, what you're not able to do from here is to set time limits on specific apps. We can only set categories here when we choose Add Limit. But if I cancel that and go back out to the main screen time settings, and I tap my screen time data here at the top, here under Most Used, you can find the specific app you want to limit, and you can tap Show More if you want to see all of your apps. But from here, just find the specific app you want to limit, tap its name, and here you can tap Add Limit to set an amount of time. I'll just cancel that for now. Now, the last of these four categories here is content and privacy restrictions. This is where you'll find the settings that used to be in the restriction settings in iOS 11 and earlier. So if I enable that, from here, you can limit the type of contents in apps and media. For example, if you only wanted to allow up to PG-13 movies on this device, you could go into Content Restrictions, into Movies, and select that option. Or if you wanted to hide certain apps, you could go into Allowed Apps and turn some of the apps off in here. I'm just going to turn that back on. In fact, I'm just going to disable this for now. But again, with a screen time passcode enabled, these settings can't be changed by anyone without the passcode. Now, if you have family sharing set up with your iCloud account, any family members you manage will also appear here under the Family section. Any devices they use on which they're signed onto their iCloud accounts that you manage can be controlled right from here. So you don't have to get your hands on your kid's device in order to manage their screen time. All you have to do here is tap their name, turn on screen time for that device, and choose the settings. Down here towards the bottom, we also have Share Across Devices. And with this enabled, this is what allows you to manage the screen time data across all the devices you're signed into with the same iCloud account. And lastly, below that, if you don't want your device tracking your usage at all, you can turn off screen time, which will delete all the screen time data that's been collected so far, and your device will no longer track this data until you turn screen time back on.